It's time for the tactics meeting, but before we start, I could save the date for the Washington State Maritime Cooperative 2026 Preparedness Conference being held on October 21st and 22nd in Ruston in Tacoma at the Silver Cloud Hotel. So use the QR code here on your screen to register or go to the Washington State Maritime Cooperative website and follow the registration link. Hope to see you there. It's time for the tactics meeting, the program where we talk to subject matter experts about response tactics and technology. And today we're going to be talking about something that's kind of complicated and adjacent to response, which is the Jones Act, which I know what it is, but I don't claim to be an expert. But we have people who are. We have Mark Curtis, who everybody knows because he's a frequent flyer and sometimes producer of the show. Mark, thanks for being on.
It's a great pleasure.
And Sarah Fryer from Centerline Logistics, who is in a new role. Sarah, welcome to the program. Tell us, what is it that you're doing now?
I am the Director of Government Affairs, which is a new position for Centerline.
Is that exciting? Are you excited about that?
That's exciting. I, have been involved with the AWO the last couple of years. It's been ramping up, and we had a change in management last August, and they decided this role was very important. So I'm excited.
Excellent. Well, it's a hard job. I don't claim to understand it, but it sounds hard.
Yeah, I've had about 15 years in this business, coming out of SUNY Maritime. So I sailed briefly and then went right to the shore side. So ops, chartering, managing the dispatchers. So kind of, all of that prepped me for where I am today.
Well, it's the next stepping stone on your way to CEO.
Well, maybe.
And Mark Curtis from Fairwater, you're actually in a new role as well.
I am. So I got Senior Director of Regulatory Affairs and Resilience as my new job just 2 months ago now, moving me out of the HSS QE realm and into something I've never done before. So I'm learning as fast as I can. I'm getting up to speed and talking to people, as Sarah just said, AWO, and learning how these things work. And just trying to be an asset to the company in a way that I haven't been so far. So,
well, excellent. Well, I'm going to start with you, Sarah. We're talking about the Jones Act. Why don't you explain it to me like I'm a toddler? What? Which is not far from the truth. Just ask my wife. Hold on, I got it. What is the Jones Act, and why do I care?
The Jones Act is our U.S. cabotage laws for domestic shipping. So it's U.S. crude owned, built, and flagged. It protects domestic transportation between two domestic ports. It is not a tariff. It's not an import restriction. But it is our U.S. cabotage laws, similar to what we see in trucking and with airlines.
Now, this was really partly about strategic resilience, right? To help making sure that the United States had hulls in order to support the military. This is a post-World War II act. Is that correct? Or am I getting that wrong? World War I. Okay.
World War I. So I'll take you farther back. So
Excellent.
cabotage, French word, it means coastal, to travel along the coast, cabotage. And England had as early as the 1600s saying, hey, if you're going to do transportation between English ports, you're going to be on an English flag vessel, you're going to have English crews on board. Spain has picked it up, France picked it up. When the United States was formed, the United States picked it up. We had privateers, of course. But when we got to, Monitor versus, the U.S. Revolutionary and then the Civil War, when we got into World War I, we got walloped by the Germans. So the vast majority of the U.S. merchant ships were absolutely destroyed by the Germans in World War One, and they needed help. So in 1920, Congress passed the U.S. Merchant Marine Act. This is an element of the U.S. Merchant Marine Act. Aside from putting a great Merchant Marine Academy together and making rules around what you can and cannot trade and who can trade, it became law. And they said, listen, to what Sarah just said, you want to go from Boston to Philadelphia, you want to bring grain, you want to bring rum, whatever you're going to transport between two U.S. ports, you're going to do it with U.S. ship, U.S. flag, U.S. crew, U.S. owned company. And if you don't, your ship has to go foreign. So ships that want to go from Boston to Philadelphia or Boston to Savannah will go to Bermuda. Or today, the cruise ship industry, foreign flag, whether it's Panama or Bahamas, they'll go to the Bahamas. Bahamas is just off the coastline. They were using Cuba for a very long time until the 1960s as a quick stop so that they could say that they went foreign. And that was that. Everything was going well for the U.S. maritime industry because there was also federal funding for shipbuilding. That was a huge part of all of this. And that went until the 1980s. Unfortunately, during the Reagan administration, all that federal funding for shipbuilding went away. So you can see, if you look at like history, the maritime sector for the United States was really, really big going into the 1980s, and then it falls off very, very quickly to the point that there's mere hundreds of U.S. flag Jones Act vessels in our fleet today. And we see all this stuff in the news about, the Ships Act. We see America First. But at the same time, there's only 2 or 3 actual shipyards that can build the types of ships for commercial use, not the military, but for commercial use, that can put together an MR, a medium range oil tanker or a container ship or something that we need today. So that's why all these new rules and regulations and ideas coming out of the current administration are good ideas, but the infrastructure is missing. So where does the Jones Act come in now?
Yep.
Right. So where does the Jones Act come in now?
Well, there's currently a waiver. And for those of you that are picking it up today, this episode is July 28th, 2026. I think that's very important because there have been waivers historically, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the historical waivers as well, because I was part of some of them.
Didn't we get some waivers during the BP oil spill so that we could bring in vessels to support skimming operations? I thought
BP, Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Maria in San Juan, Puerto Rico. I was a part of that one with Royal Caribbean Cruises so that we could actually transport people who didn't need to be in San Juan out of the danger zone, people that were just there on vacation when the hurricane struck. And we imported a whole lot of items directly from the United States. Unfortunately, the ships that we were using all had Bahamian flags on. We were bringing in aid, and that's what the Jones Act waiver is about. A limited time. I want to say for Hurricane Maria, it was like 9 days. And for Katrina, 11 days. Where
you have to prove that nothing else is available, right?
That's a big one.
Right.
If there's a U.S. flagship that can do the same work, then the U.S. flag should get that work. If we're in that dire situation where we need to move stuff right now, okay, then let's give this ship or this small company a waiver so that their foreign flag can pick up here and deliver here. And so that's some of the more historical ones. One of the coolest stories, and Sarah, if you want to jump in, let me know.
Yeah.
But I worked for Norwegian Cruise Lines for a little while. Now, Norwegian Cruise Lines loves Hawaii. Who doesn't like Hawaii? We all love Hawaii. And what they were doing is they had their international flag cruise ship that would have passengers fly into Hawaii, sail around the Hawaiian Islands, and then sail hundreds of miles to Fanning Island so that they could say they went international, like drag an anchor through a sandbar, turn around, and come all the way back to Hawaii with all that fuel burn. And so in the early 2000s, remember we had a thing called September 11th and America First. So a lot of this should be sounding very familiar. There was a hull that was built inside the United States. And that hull was purchased by Norwegian Cruise Lines, and they went to Senator John McCain. And they said, hey, back us on this one. What we'd like to do is we'd like to take the American hull. We want to outfit the ship at a shipyard that can handle it over in France. And then we want to bring in two other foreign ships that were built outside the United States. I think they were both built in Germany. And we want to bring these three ships to Hawaii and not leave the Hawaii. We'll put U.S. mariners on all three ships, but we need a waiver. So this is 2001, 2002, 2003 is the startup. They named the first ship the Pride of America. I sailed on that one for a while. The second one, Pride of Hawaii, and then the Pride of Aloha. Unfortunately, they oversaturated the market by having three cruise ships. But the Pride of America still has that exemption, and the other two ships have gone back to the foreign flag trade. And so it set a precedent saying, hey, listen, September 11th killed the Hawaii cruise industry because there was a U.S. Hawaii cruise line that did not survive after September 11th. But with no other market, we'll give NCL, Norwegian Cruise Lines America, this waiver. And they did, and it worked. And that ship is still over there sailing today as part of a long-term waiver until a U.S. cruise ship is built in the U.S., manned by U.S. crew, and wants to sail in Hawaii, then that waiver will be re-examined. Because again, all of this has to do with American ships not being available. So it made a place in the market. And this was recently upheld as of, I want to say February or March, it made it to the Supreme Court because one of the rum companies said the Jones Act is not fair to us because they were using international ships. So they said this is discriminatory towards us. We are suing the United States, made it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And you know what the Supreme Court said? It's not discriminatory because it's against everybody. It's not a single country. It's not a series of countries. They say American industry first. Then you have a chance. And so that court proceedings was literally 2 weeks before the most recent waivers. And I'm going to take a breath because Sarah's a little bit further up on the recent waivers than I am. Sarah, if you want to take over.
No, Mark, I was going to say one, too, I wanted to highlight. And it kind of shows you how a waiver was used, and maybe the right way would be the Colonial Pipeline, that ransomware attack. That was back in 2021. I think that there was a little fear that the Southeast stations would run dry. The price pumps had just escalated past $3 a gallon, which was a big deal back then. Yeah, but that was a good example of the waiver being used. They did a survey of the market to see which U.S. equipment was available, how long it would take for the equipment to get there. There was, I think, 2 waivers issued, and only one of them was actually used. I think by the time they got the second waiver, came around to using the second waiver, I think the pipeline was back up and running. So that's just, that's where that 501B comes in of like, yes, you may have a situation like the Colonial Pipeline.
Emergencies.
It's going to happen maybe once a decade, right? And looking at that, surveying the market, seeing what U.S. Jones Act tonnage is available. I think one company, if I'm not mistaken, it was Valero, was the one that sailed on that first waiver voyage, and it, it was successful, right? They did what they're supposed to do, protecting, America first, American interests.
But that's
So
not what's in place today.
no, so going into that,
Right. So this is,
yeah,
as you can imagine, while we've been talking, I done a little research.
yeah.
This is a blanket waiver.
This is a, yeah,
This is a
No research, no looking to see if there are American flag vessels. To what we know, MARAD was not a part of the approval process, and they're not showing that American vessels can be doing all of these lifts. Even today in the Tampa Times, I think they have a Russian crude oil tanker out their back door, this gigantic thing that goes right past the Navy base. It's like, wait a second, hang on. Where did national defense go? That this I want to say it's a Singapore flagged or a Malaysian flagged oil tanker picking up from the Gulf and bringing it to Tampa with only Russian sailors on
So
board.
there are a lot of extra antennas on it by chance?
I need to be suspicious.
Hmm.
So to explain the current ones, when the current Iran war started, everybody saw the gas prices increase pretty quickly. The gas prices have come up and down, up and down, up and down. Depending on where you live, it's more dramatic. I know Washington State pays a lot more for gasoline than, say, Florida does. California pays more than us, and Alaska pays more than everybody.
Shockingly, I can pay as much. I can see as much as $1.50 a gallon swing, depending on where in Washington I buy it.
Exactly. So in order to try and alleviate the market and say, hey, we just need to be moving more of the refined product, they said, let's issue a waiver for the following products. And it was kind of limited. So your diesel, your gasoline, your avgas, the naphthas, all of the ones, and somehow went into asphalt at one point. So we had a Chinese vessel moving asphalt between two U.S. ports. And it just started to go, and we all went, wow, this is crazy. Well, luckily it's a temporary waiver that then got extended. So I believe the current date, this current one should be over on August 16th or 17th. Yep. But there's rumors that it's going to be extended again for specific coastlines because the prices of gasoline have not gone down. So the big question is, why is the waiver still there if it's not doing what we were told it was going to do? It's not necessarily an emergency for us right now, but there's other cases that need to be discussed. And one of the big ones is all the refinery closings on the West Coast. So while Washington State, Oregon are bringing in that Alaska North Slope crude and they're processing it, when you get down into California is actually shuttering refinery after refinery after refinery as part of their specific emissions control systems. And the oil majors and the banks say, you know what, why don't we just walk away from California for a little bit? We'll see what happens next, but we don't want to be in that part of the business anymore.
Right. So actually, Oregon has no refining capabilities.
Correct.
At all. So Washington.
Same thing in Florida.
Right.
Florida,
and we bring in, Washington
Yep.
brings in Alaska North Slope crude by tanker, but we also bring in Bakken crude by rail, a lot of it, and Canadian tar sands by pipeline. So, there's at least one refinery in Washington right now that doesn't process any Alaska North Slope. They use a Bakken Cold Lake blend. Right?
So whether
California is a petroleum island. There's no pipelines in, there's no pipelines out, right?
So then it becomes, how are you getting those refined fuels that you depend on so much, whether it's gasoline, diesel, the AV gas for all of the airports? It's got to come somehow. And if you compare, again, an MR tanker, a medium range tanker, to the number of trucks that would need to be on the highway, which they don't like either, or the rail system to bring it down into Central and Southern California, what is the most efficient? It's going to be a ship. What is the safer based on all the rules and regulations and the history of the industry? It's now a ship. Yes, there were bad historical moments for the tanker industry, but after 1989, the regulations have gotten pretty dramatically different. Hence, we have WSMIC.
Right. Well, when I started in this business, in this oil spill business in 1997, we'd respond to an oil spill in Washington like every other week. And we'd go to the refineries or we'd go to ships or whatnot. It was happening all the time. And then it was once a month, and then it's every 6 months. And now, like at WSMIC, we get about 12 responses a year, and they average well less than a gallon. I mean, they're tiny, and they're all either transfer incidents or they're hydraulic machinery issues that have nothing to do with cargo or fuel for main propulsion, right? So regulation works, safety works, construction practices work, double hull construction, redundant engine room, redundant steering, all of this works, right?
And I want to put it on the universe. I'm not against foreign flag tankers doing business in the United States as long as it follows the rules. I have no problem with them coming in and exporting out of Alaska, out of Washington, out of California. If they're coming to pick up and they leave, or vice versa, they're bringing something over that we need, cool. The going between the U.S. ports is the issue because, again, it goes all the way back to cabotage law. And so the other thing that I want to put out in the universe is I've been on some of the most beautiful, well-kept, amazing foreign flag ships. I've sailed on pretty much every ocean. I've gone to every continent, and most of that was done on board foreign flag vessels. U.S. vessels, foreign flag vessels, it's about who takes care of them, how well you keep them up, how are you regulated. U.S. Coast Guard does an amazing job with their flag state inspections, as does multiple other countries around the world, Australia, France, India. They're all doing flag state inspections of these vessels to say, okay, you can come into our country because we've inspected you. So I don't want to make people sound like it's foreign flag, it's got to be a bad ship. That's not the case. It's bad for U.S. business and the U.S. economy and U.S. mariners specifically, people that are not getting the jobs, if that foreign flag is allowed to just sail from U.S. port to U.S. port, doing jobs that they could be doing instead.
Right. Well,
and that's our issue with the current waiver that's in place today.
Well, I think it's important to step back a little bit because the whole point here is to protect the American maritime industry, to help keep a thriving U.S. maritime industry. And a good part of that purpose following World War I, as you have pointed out, was about strategic defense issues. We cannot rely on foreign flag oil tankers or cargo ships to support us in a wartime environment. We have to be able to transport that fuel to support our troops. We need to be able to transport that cargo. We need to be able to transport personnel. You cannot farm that out to foreign flag. That is the point. And the Jones Act is about putting rules in place that allow that maritime industry to thrive. And if you take that away, I mean, as you pointed out in the beginning, we have very few deep draft U.S. flag ships left in the fleet. What is it? Is it sub 300 at this point?
I think I saw 80, Mark.
80 doesn't take into consideration things like ATBs.
ATVs, yeah.
Yeah, and so it depends on your definition of, what is transporting coastwise. But in terms of the larger ones, yeah, it's under 100 for larger vessels
Right.
with
But it's not
American flag, with American crew, owned by an American company flying an American flag.
right. So how is this current set of waivers impacting the American maritime industry right now? Are there U.S. flag vessels that are sitting unused because foreign flag is now running those routes under these waivers? That's the
There are
question.
there are confirmed reports
Yep.
of U.S. Jones Act companies that are waiting for a better contract. Because imagine you're the refinery. What are you going to do? Are you going to hire the very high-end cost of a U.S. tanker when you can get a waivered vessel to come and do 2, 3, 4 lifts for that exact same amount of money? So the people that are actually getting the benefits are the refineries and the oil majors themselves in this entire situation. So I'm not going to name names of vessels or companies or anything like that, but I do know that there are shipmates of mine who sat on the beach for weeks and weeks and weeks because vessels did not have work. So they're just waiting for work to come through. But there's no monetary incentive for the refinery to say, hey, we want your ship to move this from here to here, when they can get another foreign flag vessel to come and do it for much less.
Right. All right.
And Dan,
Hold
too,
on.
I was going to say, Dan, too, something else to point out is just if you can see, again, not to name names of companies, but the market rate per day that you would get on the spot market for some of this equipment for Jones Act equipment has gone down significantly to try to match what traders are getting for some of this foreign flag tonnage. And it's, everyone's still feeling the effects of it. And then also, Mark, there's that reluctance for investments into equipment or modifications or new builds, right? Like people are especially supporting Maritime Action Plan and the Ships Act and everything that we were looking forward to going into this year. Like, it's
Where to
like,
go?
what
Yeah.
does the future look like?
Yeah, they're good ideas,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we're not seeing any actual plans. You get the Philly shipyards, which is owned by a Korean company right now, which was one of the last ones to build MR tankers. And you say, well, hang on a second. What else is there? And that's where ATBs actually become the toy winner, because you can build a tug up, in Wisconsin, and you can build the barge over in Portland, and you connect them, and now you have an ATB, compared to trying to build an oil tanker in 2026, 2027, 2030, whatever the case may be. The ATB and the ITB fleets are starting to take over as the predominant transporter, either brown or blue water, to get things coastwise where they need to go, because we just don't have the shipbuilding capability currently. So I'd like to see the U.S. government, the current administration, throw the money towards shipbuilding. You hear Sean Duffy talk about it all the time, but you don't see any action saying, okay, here's $14 billion, build a shipyard. Big shipyard. We have repair yards, we have dry docks. We just don't have shipbuilding anymore. Not like we used to.
So, Sarah, these waivers were intended, correct me if I'm wrong, but these waivers were intended to help lower the price of gasoline in the United States with, these huge prices we're paying at the pump. But how much gasoline is really transported by water? I mean, how much is it really going to affect that?
Yeah, so it's not as much as you think. It's only about 6.5% of U.S. gasoline moves on Jones Act vessels.
I think we touched on it earlier, but Mark, there is a difference between a Jones Act vessel and a U.S. flag vessel. Am I getting that right? What is there?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
When you talk about military, when you talk about security of the United States, there aren't enough ships. There really aren't. And so one of the recent laws that went into effect created the Tanker Security Plan. Tanker Security Plan are a series of tankers that were foreign, but they've been put into U.S. service, so they have to be reflagged from whatever country they're coming from. Right now, I believe there's 10 of them, and the plan is to move up to 20 over the next 2 or 3 years. And what they have to do is they have to go in, they get inspected by the United States Coast Guard, they reflag it to a United States flag, they put all U.S. crew members on board, and what they can do is they can pick up that fuel. Say they pick up out of Hawaii. I think everybody knows we had that incident with the fuel in the water supply, so they had to empty out all the fuel tanks at the Navy base in Honolulu. Well, somebody had to go and pick up all of the remaining fuel out of those tanks, and that was the TSP tankers, the tanker security, but they couldn't bring it back to the United States. Even though they have a U.S. flag on the vessel, they were not U.S. Jones Act, because you have to follow all the rules, not just some of them. Yes, they have an American crew. Yes, they have an American flag. Was the hull built in the United States? No. So you can sail with that U.S. flag on it, no problem, but you cannot go on these cabotage rules between U.S. port to U.S. port. So they would take them off to other places, maybe U.S. bases on foreign soil or U.S. territorial, such as Guam, in order to provide that fuel out of Hawaii to a place where they are allowed to deliver to. And that's still true today, is if you're going to pick up using a TSP tanker from a U.S. port, you need to go foreign. You need to go somewhere else, just like the international voyages, before you can discharge, if you're going to discharge back in the United States. And we acknowledge that during an emergency situation, we do need help.
Yes.
That's the thing. I'm okay during a national emergency, whether it's Katrina, whether it's Maria, whether it's if I remember correctly, even the Haiti earthquake way back in the day, we made amends in order to get humanitarian aid to places where it needed to go, large oil spills, that sort of thing. So there's nothing wrong with limited time waivers, but this one just won't go away, it seems. So there is an action, if you don't mind me.
Please, what is our call to action? If you, listening to this podcast, care about the U.S. maritime industry and care about our national security and care about America first, this is what you need to do. Take it away.
All right. So there's a website for an organization called the American Waterways Organization. We've mentioned it a couple times, AWO. It has a section dedicated to the Jones Act. And when you get into that section, it's about Jones Act advocacy. And there's a link in there, and we'll put it into the podcast at some level, where you just put in your details and your information. And there's a bunch of automation where it automatically will send to based on your area code, the appropriate congressperson, the appropriate senator, the appropriate governor, to say that you would like this waiver process to be, go back to what it was, be restrictive, put it back to what it was when we need it during an emergency, but not every single day of the year. And so if you get a chance, again, it's the American Waterways Organization, AWO, and it actually has the ability to say, can you send it again in 2 weeks in case they didn't read the first email?
Oh, nice.
Which I appreciated. I was like, all right, there you go. So it is there. You can edit it to be whatever wording you want it to be. But they've done a really good job of creating a blanket statement that covers everything we've talked about today.
Excellent. Well, we'll get that out in the show notes, and we'll get a link up on the screen. Sarah, do you have anything to say in closing as we wrap today's episode up?
Yeah, and I guess to add on to what Mark said, the proper use of a waiver is, narrowing the geography, the commodity that would go on the waiver, and making sure it's an emergency and used for a very short duration. So understand that there's a process for it under 501B, understand why there's a need, but in terms of going forward and protecting our maritime industry, blanket waivers need to be revised. So
Roger that. Well, that's it for this episode then. Mark Curtis, Sarah Fryer, thank you so much for taking the time to enlighten us on the Jones Act and where we're at today.
Thank you, Dan, for having us.
Thanks, Dan.